Hello to Sacred Heart staff and volunteers. This is a video tutorial to introduce you to the new HMIS version 5.0. I'm going to give you a brief overview in this video of how things are laid out, where you can find different aspects of HMIS as compared to the old version. And in terms of getting more detailed training on how to swipe for services or how to register a new customer, we're going to get into that in different videos or just different trainings. This is just a basic introduction so that people are a little bit more familiar when we do the switch, which will be on April 22nd, coming up very soon. So this is the first page that you see when you log into HMIS. This is referred to as a dashboard. You still have the same tabs that you had in version 4. I'm going to show you the old version here. This is what you see when you first log into HMIS now, and you see up on top you have all the different tabs. We typically use Client Point and Scan Point, and we also do a little bit in Reports and Admin. They're all across the top. In the new version, all of those tabs are on the side. But a new addition to version 5.0, which is going to be helpful mostly for staff, maybe not as much for volunteers, but it's still some interesting stuff, is the dashboard. This area right here. You'll see there's two boxes, one here, one here. These are called dashlets, and they each serve different purposes. You can customize your dashboard. You can remove dashlets. You can see this little X here allows you to remove this one. This one is permanent. But if you click down here where it says Customize Homepage Dashboard, you can add and remove dashlets. Most of them don't necessarily apply to us at Sacred Heart. This counts report will be something that we might utilize. The others at this point we wouldn't necessarily use, but that's what this area is about. As we look at the dashlets, on the left we see System News and Agency News. So system news are going to be things that CTA, the agency that manages this database in Santa Clara County, they're going to be posting articles up here similarly to what happens on our old site right here, these news flash things. This is where you find updated information about HMIS. Agency news is an area that we control. So if we want to add notes as updates for volunteers or customers, we may add them here. So I think it'd be a good idea as you get familiar with the database to just check in on agency news every now and then and see if there's any new information for our agency, and we'll try to add relevant information as it comes up. On the right here we have accounts report, and this is probably mostly going to be something that staff will utilize. Within the counts report there's 4 boxes, and you can customize these boxes to give you different types of reports. For example, this box here says My Clients. In HMIS you can assign yourself as a case manager to a customer, and they will show up in your My Clients list. We don't necessarily do case management functions at Sacred Heart, but in terms of keeping track of certain customers, if you wanted to have a list of certain customers based on interactions you've had with them or information you want to tell them or something like that, you can assign yourself to them and they will show up in your My Clients list. So I can click on this and it'll bring up a window that will show the 7 people that were listed in that box. You can see right here this box that says Processing. You're going to see that as different windows try to load. It's kind of hidden because it's not a bright color or anything like that, but you'll want to look up here to know that the computer is thinking and trying to bring up information. So when I clicked on that, this shows the full list of customers that I have assigned myself to as a case manager. Some of these other reports may make sense to some, they may not make sense to others. Clients with expiring ROIs. You can assign this box to tell you whoever's getting swiped that day, if they have expiring ROIs, they'll populate this list, and you can generate a list from it at the end of the day if you want to be able to like make notes about it. So anyways, I'm not going to get too into it, but you can click this pencil to edit what goes into each of these 4 boxes. So right here it says top left. You can choose what report you want to use from this big list here to populate that top left box. And then you can do that for every box, top right, bottom left, etc. And once you click a function, this says clients with expiring ROIs, you can choose how it looks at the data, how it filters based on the day that they came in, things like that. So I'm not going to spend much more time on that, but play around with that. That is an interesting dashlet. Okay, another item I wanted to mention is shadow. You can shadow another user. In other words, you can kind of pretend to be them and enter data and do things under their username. This is good for, let's say, Welcome Center staff who are training a new volunteer, and maybe the new volunteer accidentally did something that they didn't want to do. You can go in as them and change data, and it'll show that user changed the data as opposed to you. Or let's say you want to customize somebody's dashboard for them and they don't know how. You can go in as them, make changes to the dashboard, and it'll be reflected on their account. And all you really have to do to shadow somebody is to type in their name. I'll use Kathy's name because I know that she'd be a good sport about this. Search, and there she shows up. I can click on it, and then it'll say that I'm shadowing Kathy, and I could do things under her user and then back out of it later. You only have privileges to shadow folks that are at the same level as you or under in terms of admin privileges within the system. So you're not able to, I wouldn't be able to, let's say, go into John O'Keefe's account and edit stuff in him because he's at a higher level than me. So that's just something that's good for people to know, staff that are needing to do things under volunteer usernames. Okay, next we're going to look at client point. So over here on the left, we have our different tabs. I'll click on Client Point, and you see it brings us to Client Search. This is the same as with our current version. One thing that's missing right now that we've requested to be changed is we're looking to get the birth date field added so that we can search by birth date, because that's often the only way that we can find somebody. So that will hopefully come. For now, we're going to type in a CID number of a test customer that we have in our database here. This little pop-up window, the backdate mode, is something you don't have to worry about. I think it's going to be removed by the time we start. But if it's not, if you know what backdate is, you know how to use this. If you don't know what it is, just click Use Current System Date, or you can X out of it and don't worry about it. So one of the new things about version 5.0 is we have a summary page within the client profile. You can see we're on the Summary tab right here. All these different tabs are within Client Point. We typically work in Client Profile, Assessments, we do ROIs, and we work with households. All the rest of the tabs won't necessarily apply to us. So, first thing we're going to look at here is just kind of the layout of the summary page. So the summary page is kind of like the dashboard in that it has all these different boxes that have information about this client, and it's customizable. So John at the admin level is going to make some decisions on what windows we want to see as Sacred Heart to highlight different pieces of information about our customers. There's a huge list to choose from, and we're going to make the decision on what makes the most sense. So we'll see this evolving and changing and making more sense to us as time goes on. But it will have a lot of really good information, and again, the purpose of it will be at a glance we can see really important stuff that we want to see. For example, this households window shows that this person is actually enrolled in 2 separate households, so that's really good for us to know right off the bat. We also want to get a window that shows their previous visits so that we can see the history of when they've come in for what services, and we're going to get that on here. This is a release of information window, so it shows the different ROIs that this person has under them. So there should be some good information that we'll be able to populate on the screen. Another cool thing is that we have this picture field. I'll show you where we can edit it, but our hope is that as we continue to get more sophisticated, we can add a little picture taking section in the Welcome Center so that we can add a person's picture to their profile, so that, let's say they lose their card or they have had their card stolen and somebody else is trying to use it, we actually have a picture to compare to the person standing in front of us. So that's something that we hope to incorporate in the future. The next tab we're going to look at is Client Profile. Client profile is similar to what we see now. It has a lot of the same information that we see now when we click on a client's account. We have the picture up here, and this change button is where we would edit that. We have some basic information up here. We have some demographics information right here. This is our 8 fields section that we typically fill out when we're signing up a new customer. There's some other windows. We typically don't use a lot of these, but it is important to mention that we have the ability to attach files to a customer. You can see right here, file attachments. If there was, let's say, a document that we wanted to scan and keep track of, keep attached to the customer, we can scan it and then attach it right here. The next tab we're going to look at is households. It's the next tab here. And again, like that little box showed us before, this person is assigned to 2 separate households. And of course, we want to try to fix that as we see it. So this is a helpful screen to show us what the person's connection is to these households. We see that there's 2 here. We can also look at previous households down below. I'm going to expand that tab. And it shows that this person, so 219815 is the person that we're looking at. They're the grandson in this household. They are, looks like they're duplicated in this household, and they were associated with this household before. So this is just more information than we've currently had available to us. So it's helpful to be able to figure out what's going on with a person's account. I'm going to close the previous households. Another thing that's helpful is that to the right here you see a column that says previous associations and household count. So we can look at, we're looking at 219815 right here. We can see that they are currently a part of three households in total because of this previous household. And so that's just, you know, good information to have right off the bat as we're trying to figure things out. The next tab is ROI, and there's really nothing too new about this. You can add a new ROI right here. It's just basically the same thing. We're going to skip over entry exit because that doesn't get used by us. Case managers, like I had mentioned in the dashboard area, we can assign ourselves as case managers to a customer, and they will show up in our list of my clients. You can do that by clicking Add Case Manager. I'm going to choose, I can choose just the person or the whole household, and just for the sake of this, I'll choose the whole household, and then I'm going to pick myself here and Add Case Manager, and I'm right there. I'm going to go back to the dashboard, home, and you'll see that there's 9. And that means that the 2 folks that I just added are now in my clients list. So let's go back to client point. We're going to enter in the same person that we were just at. Back to the page that I was just at. So we're back into the client point here. So we talked about case managers. We're not going to worry about case plans or SSOM or activities. Let's look at assessments. This is the full data entry screen that some of our staff and volunteers utilize. So it has all of the different fields on our application that need to be filled out. This is, you know, basically the same thing as what we typically do, so there's really no need to explain it. The other intakes that we have at the agency are all listed here. You can look at something different if you need to. Another important area to look at under the client point screen is service transactions. So we have client information with all of these sub-tabs, and then we have service transactions. When we click on service transactions, we have a few options here. Just as in HMIS 4, when we are in a client's account, we can click on service transactions, and we can look at their history of service here at Sacred Heart. If we go back to 5, we can look at their previous transactions in a couple ways. You can click on View Previous Service Transactions, and it shows a list of their previous visits, but it doesn't have dates attached to it, which is sometimes difficult. So I'm going to click back to dashboard and click View Entire Service History. This is a more thorough view. It shows dates right here, but it looks like there's duplicate entries. You can see 2 foods, 2 formulas, 2 foods, but all that is opening the need and closing the need. So it's actually one transaction. So it's a little bit more thorough than you may want to see, but it has the date. So those are 2 different ways you can look at the history of a person's visits. We'll go back to dashboard. These other tabs are not necessarily that applicable. So let's go back to client information. We're back to our summary screen here. Activities tab, I had said I'm not going to go into it because we don't use it, but for maybe education or family support, this might be something to take a closer look at. It allows you to enroll people in activities. I don't really know too much about it. John might know a little bit more, but you may want to play with it. There may be a way to keep a roster. I'm not really sure, but that's just there. You may want to take a look at that. A couple other things I'm going to mention as I look at my notes here. If you go to the Service Transactions tab within a client's profile, you can click Eligibility Search. Self-Sufficiency has played with the eligibility module within HMIS, and they're kind of figuring out whether it makes sense for them to use. I'm not sure how it differs in version 5, but you'll want to play with it and see if it's something that you'll want to use, but that's found in the Service Transactions dashboard. Go back to client information. In the ROI screen, we were in there earlier, there's this paperclip, and this paperclip allows you to save an attachment. So we don't really utilize it now, attachments, but if we had some reason to scan a document and attach it to a person's file to access later, we could do that here as well. Just something that's good to know. Up in this section, we have 2 little tabs, Last Viewed and Favorites. Last Viewed is kind of a list of the people that you've recently looked at. We've only been looking at one client, so it just shows one, but it'll build a small list. So it's just easy to kind of jump back to see who, if we needed to get back into a client profile that we were previously in. Favorites is a list that you can build. So as I'm in a client profile, there's a star up here, and it says Add to Favorites here. You can click on that, and it'll show up on your favorites list. This is another way, a little bit simpler way, to keep track of a list of people. If you don't want to list yourself as their case manager, you can make them your favorite. So let's see, I will look up a new person that is not in my favorites list. Let's see. Okay, so this person up here, I'm going to click the star, and it just added them here. So that's just kind of a cool list to have. Again, if you want to keep track of certain people, you can have quick access by putting them in your favorites list. And last viewed, it just shows that I looked at this person. So those are a couple more things. So I'm going to skip out on showing you scan point. I'm going to save that for a separate tutorial because it's a bit more involved. But that is a brief overview of version 5.0. I hope that it was helpful. Okay, thank you very much.